The penthouse lay in serene silence, a stillness that transformed the bustling city beyond into a distant realm. Lena reclined upon the grand king-size bed, enveloped in a world of her own making. The black silk robe, a gift from her husband during their enchanting days in Paris, gently parted as she settled back against the plush pillows. As the clock struck just beyond the hour of 9:30 in the evening, the master bedroom was enveloped in the soft, golden embrace of city lights cascading through the expansive floor-to-ceiling windows. In the distance, the skyline of Chicago sparkled like a jewel, yet Lena's gaze was turned inward, her body thrumming with a subtle, restless vitality. The room was infused with a delicate hint of lavender body oil, its soothing fragrance intertwining with a richer, more profound essence that lingered in the atmosphere. Her breath flowed with a calm rhythm, each inhalation gentle and measured, while her movements were deliberate and unhurried, as though time itself had paused to embrace this fleeting instant. The silk robe flowed effortlessly, shimmering in the light as it parted, the fabric a gentle caress against her skin. Her mind wandered far away, while her body held onto a tightness that yearned for liberation. She allowed her head to tilt back, her fingers meandering in languid, absent patterns across her stomach. Her touch was gentle yet unwavering. The city's glow brushed gentle strokes across her skin, the warmth enveloping her as she surrendered to the rhythm's embrace. In the stillness, a sudden sharp click of the door handle shattered the silence. Lena halted, her hands pausing in the air, eyes widening in surprise, her heart racing as the sound pierced through the silence. For a fleeting instant, she whispered to herself that it was merely a trivial occurrence, perhaps the building adjusting itself or the wine playfully shaking the windows. But then, a heavy thud echoed as a gym bag hit the floor, twisting her stomach in a knot of dread. Jared lingered in the doorway, his silhouette gently illuminated by the warm glow of the hallway light. He wore gym clothes, his dark hair slightly damp, his chest rising and falling as if he had just finished a run. His eyes, deep and shadowy like his father's yet imbued with a gentler, youthful light, captured hers for a fleeting moment, then glanced downward before swiftly averting away. The silence that enveloped them was dense and weighty, creating an atmosphere where the air seemed almost too fragile to inhale. The ACSAG kicked on, stirring the hem of her robe and inviting a cool breeze to dance across her skin. Lena felt the heat rise in her cheeks, her heart racing fiercely within her chest. Yet, with determination, she sat up, drawing the robe tightly around her with a precise, intentional gesture. Jared's voice wavered, a gritty tremor lacing his words. With the deliberate clearing of his throat, he cast his eyes downward, as if the floor held secrets only he could understand. Did I leave my protein shake in here? It was a deception, and they both felt it deep within their hearts. In his room, the mini fridge was perpetually filled to the brim. Lena felt the constriction in her throat as she stood tall, her fingers clutching the smooth silk of her robe. "Your father's in Dubai until Friday," she said, her voice unwavering, even as her heart raced beneath the surface. It was a declaration, a whisper of truth, though she couldn't quite grasp for whom it was intended, him or herself. Jared remained silent, his jaw tightened, and for a fleeting moment, she sensed he might utter something more. Yet, in a sudden twist, he pivoted with determination, marching out of the room and forcefully shutting the door in his wake. The echo danced through the penthouse, crisp and conclusive. Lena sat motionless on the bed, her heart pounding fiercely, her fingers quivering against the smooth silk of her robe. She could still sense the intensity of his gaze, a warmth in his eyes, the way they had hung in the air for her. The moment stretched on, lingering far too long. Her body pulsed with a vitality it had long been deprived of. The tension wound up like a spring, steadfast and unyielding. She cast her eyes upon the mirror hanging on the wall, her reflection gazing back at her with an air of intrigue. Her eyes sparkled with wonder, Her cheeks glowed with excitement, and her lips were gently parted, as if ready to share a secret she bore no trace of shame. No, it was a tale of its own, a narrative unlike any other, something that stirred her insides and sent her heart racing. Lena released a shaky breath and reclined against the pillows, her fingers wandering absent-mindedly across her stomach. The suspense remained, yet she lacked the heart or the courage to see through what she had begun. Instead, she gazed up at the ceiling, the city lights weaving shifting patterns across the smooth surface. Her mind raced, replaying the moment over and over. The way Jared had gazed at her, the manner in which his voice had trembled, the way he had dashed away as though the very air around him were ablaze. She turned on to her sigh, enveloping herself in warmth, the silk rope cascading around her like a gentle embrace. The penthouse fell into a hush once more, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the soft echo of her heartbeat, whispered softly to her. She shut her eyes, attempting to banish the thoughts swirling in her mind, yet they remained, persistent and unyielding. As she slipped into a fitful slumber, a single thought lingered, refusing to fade away. The tale was far from its conclusion. 48 hours had slipped by since the event in the bedroom, and the penthouse exuded a palpable tension, as if the very atmosphere was suspended in anticipation. The dining table, it gleamed with a flawless brilliance, mirroring the gentle radiance of the pendant light above. Between Lena and Jared rested takeout containers filled with Szechuan beef and dumplings, steam rising gently from the lids. The aroma of garlic and chili all wafted through the air, yet neither of them appeared to observe. Jared sat across from Lena, his knee bouncing restlessly under the table, causing the chopsticks beside his plate to rattle in a rhythmic dance. He had not cast a glance in her direction since entering, his eyes glued to his meal or the surface of the table or the wall loomed behind her. Lena, in contrast, observed him intently, her fingers absent-mindedly swirling the Merlot in her glass, the wine's legs tracing the sides like delicate crimson veins. The air hung thick with unspoken words, a weighty pause that seemed poised to break at the slightest sound. Lena savored a deliberate sip of her wine, the sharp bitterness dancing on her tongue, and made the choice to shatter the silence. "We must confront this," she stated, her voice steady yet resolute. Jared's head lifted sharply, his dark eyes narrowing just a touch. "What is the address?" he murmured softly, jabbing at a dumpling with his fork. The soy sauce danced across a pristine linen tablecloth, yet he remained blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding beneath him. Lena leaned forward slightly, her elbows resting on the table, her gaze unwavering. "You've kept a watchful eye on me ever since that fateful evening, as if you're anticipating my next move." "To what end?" he cut in, his voice a murmur, laced with a hint of something cutting. His knuckles turned pale as he clutched his fork tightly. "Shall I indulge in that sensation once more?" "Indeed, I am." The air was thick with unspoken truths, lingering like a heavy fog, and for a fleeting moment they remained still, caught in the weight of their silence. Lena's heart raced, yet her gaze remained steadfast. She was unable to dot in his gaze. There lingered an intensity unlike anything she had ever encountered, a force that sent her stomach into knots and stole her breath away. She savored another sip of her wine, the bitterness anchoring her in the moment. "Your father hasn't touched me in 6 months," she confessed, the words leaving a bitter aftertaste on her tongue. It was an unexpected revelation, the kind that slipped from her lips unbidden. Before she had a chance to rein them in, Jared's expression danced momentarily, a fleeting shadow crossing his features. For a fleeting moment, he averted his gaze, his jaw clenching as though he were engaged in a silent battle with the thoughts swirling within him. At last, when he found his voice, it emerged as a gravelly murmur, scarcely rising above a whisper. "I ended my relationship with Sarah, as thoughts of you lingered in my mind during our time together." He severed the connection, his jaw tightening. Yet the intensity within his gaze completed the unspoken words, weaving a narrative all its own. Lena felt a flutter in her chest, her fingers gripping a wine glass with a newfound intensity. She was taken by surprise. She was taken completely by surprise by all of this. The room seemed to shrink in an instant, the walls pressing closer, the air heavy with an unspoken tension and an unsettling presence. Something she wasn't prepared to confront. With a delicate touch, she placed her glass upon the table, the unexpected clink resonating more prominently than she had anticipated. "Tomorrow," she declared, her voice unwavering even in the face of uncertainty. The way her heart raced in the quiet of my room, as the clock strikes 10 p.m. We shall harmonize with the beats. Nothing else. Jared's gaze was fixed upon hers, his eyes deep and enigmatic. For a moment, he fell silent, and she pondered whether he might dispute her, if he would strive for greater things. Yet, he gave a slight nod, only a single time, a swift, resolute gesture. The hush that enveloped them was more profound than ever, the gravity of their shared decisions resting between them like an uninvited guest at the table. Lena nibbled at her food, not really hungry, her thoughts swirling like a tempest, each one a thread she couldn't quite weave together. Jared sat there, untouched food before him, his knee a restless rhythm beneath the table, eyes locked on the plate as if it held the answers he sought. The evening unfolded in a haze. The meal left untouched as the atmosphere grew heavy with unspoken words. As the last dish was removed from the table, a heavy silence enveloped them, words unspoken hanging in the air. The stillness enveloped them, thick with an unvoiced tension, a sense of destiny hanging in the air. As Lena stood at the sink, rinsing her wineglass under the tap, she glimpsed Jared's reflection in the window. He stood by the counter, arms crossed, eyes locked onto her with an intensity that spoke volumes. She sensed its weight, the heat radiating from it, sending a shiver cascading down her spine. She remained facing forward. With a gentle touch, she placed the glass down, her hands gliding over the surface as she dried them, each motion measured and intentional. "Sleep well, Jared," she spoke, her tone steady yet resolute. He paused, leaving her in a moment of uncertainty, pondering whether he might break the silence, whether he would dare to test the limits they had just established. Yet, he gave a slight nod, only a single time. As he pivoted to depart, the sound of his footsteps reverberated through the corridor. Lena lingered in the kitchen, her hands posed on the counter's edge, as thoughts swirled through her mind after he had left. The penthouse was quiet once more. Yet, the silence carried a new weight this time, electrifying, anticipating. With a trembling exhale, she extinguished the lights, and the darkness enveloped the room entirely. As she strolled down the hallway toward her bedroom, an unsettling sensation lingered in the air, whispering that a change had woven itself into the fabric of her connection with Jared. Something that cannot be undone. The following afternoon, the penthouse glimmered under a warm, golden sunlight, the sort that wrapped around you like a cozy blanket, making the world seem soft and slow. Lena glided through the space with a measured grace, her bare feet embracing the softness of the plush rug as she leaned down to nourish the fiddle-leaf fig nestled in the corner of the living room. She donned cut-off denim shorts and a cropped tank top, the fabric relaxed and easygoing. Yet, the way it hugged her figure revealed much more than it concealed. Jared lounged on the couch, his textbook sprawled open before him. Yet the pages remained untouched for nearly half an hour. He watched her every move, his eyes deep and inscrutable. Yet, the tightness in his jaw revealed the turmoil within. Lena sensed his gaze, intense and unwavering, and she welcomed it. Indeed, she embraced the moment, her movements transforming into a graceful dance, each action slow and intentional as she reached for the highest leaves of the plant. The hem of her shorts crept higher as she leaned forward, and a sharp intake of breath echoed from behind her. She remained facing away, offering no acknowledgement. Yet a subtle smirk danced at the corner of her lips as she straightened and glided toward the kitchen. The fridge brimmed with bottles of water, and she reached for one. The cool plastic refreshing against her palm. With a deft twist, she removed the cap and savored a slow sip, a few drops escaping as she tilted her head back, embracing the moment. It trickled down her chin, cascading over her collarbones, and she let out a soft gasp. More for dramatic flair than anything else. Oh dear, she whispered softly. Placing the bottle aside and reaching for a paper towel, she noticed how Jared's gaze lingered on the water trails, his jaw clenching as he turned his eyes elsewhere. "You are playing dirty," he whispered, his voice thick with tension. Lena pivoted to meet his gaze, casually leaning against the counter. "I'm just thirsty," she replied, her tone sweet and innocent, yet the spark in her eyes hinted at something more. Her bare foot glided up his calf beneath the table, and in that moment, he became still, the textbook slipping from his mind. "Don't," he cautioned, yet his tone betrayed a hint of uncertainty. "Don't what?" she inquired, her voice playful, as her foot continued its leisurely, teasing journey up his leg. Jared's gaze was fixed upon hers, his eyes deep and fervent. "Have you ever considered this?" Lena smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips that made his breath catch. With a swift motion, she withdrew her foot and grasped her water bottle, abandoning him in that moment. His textbook left behind, heart pounding in anticipation. The afternoon unfolded in a haze of purposeful, measured movements. Lena reached for a high shelf, her fingers just grazing the edge, then bent down to retrieve a napkin that had slipped from her grasp and leaned over the counter, her eyes focused on a pen just out of reach. Every motion was deliberate, crafted to challenge Jared's determination, and with each instance, she noticed his eyes lingering, his jaw clenching as he struggled to avert his gaze. As dinner approached, the atmosphere crackled with unspoken words, a dense weight that lingered in the air, reminiscent of a brewing tempest ready to unleash its fury. In the stillness of the room, they dined quietly, the soft clink of cutlery against plates the sole melody accompanying their meal. Lena's foot brushed against his once more beneath the table, and this time, he held his ground. As the last dish was removed from the table, a heavy silence enveloped them, each lost in their own thoughts. The quiet that lingered between them was thick with unvoiced emotions, a tension that seemed destined to unfold. As Lena stood at the sink, rinsing her plate under the tap, she caught a glimpse of Jared's reflection in the window. He stood by the counter, arms crossed, his eyes locked onto her with an intensity that spoke volumes. She sensed its weight, the heat enveloping her, and a shiver danced down her spine. She remained facing forward, unyielding. With a gentle touch, she placed the plate down, her hands gliding through the air as she dried them, each movement measured and intentional. "My sanctuary. 10 in the evening. Do you recall?" she inquired, her tone steady yet resolute. With a single nod, he pivoted and strode away, the sound of his footsteps reverberating through the corridor. The hour inched toward 10, and Lena's bedroom was shrouded in a gentle twilight, the sole illumination coming from the soft flicker of the TV casting shadows on the far wall. She perched on the edge of the grand bed, her fingers dancing anxiously over the smooth silk sheets, weaving invisible tales with each delicate movement. The atmosphere was charged with expectation, a soft drone of the air conditioner barely cutting through the palpable tension that had been simmering between her and Jared throughout the day. The door let out a soft creak as it opened, and Jared entered, gently closing it behind him. He paused for a heartbeat, his eyes wandering across her form, her bare legs, the delicate strap of her nightgown slipping off one shoulder. The way she averted his gaze, he began to speak, but Lena interrupted him with a decisive shake of her head. "Come, take a seat," she beckoned, her tone steady yet resolute. motioning to the space beside her on the bed. Jared paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his mind, before he complied, lowering himself onto the mattress while maintaining a deliberate space between them. The bed sank slightly as he settled in, and Lena sensed the warmth emanating from him. A palpable presence even without their bodies meeting. The remote quivered gently in her grasp as she aimed it at the television, the screen springing to life with a flicker. The menu for Forbidden's Family, Volume 12 emerged, its title striking and unyielding. Lena's heart raced, her throat constricting as she pressed play. The grainy film commenced, the camera gliding over an opulent bedroom before focusing on a woman in her 40s, her lace teddy revealing much yet holding an air of mystery. She rested against the desk, her hips gently swaying as she spoke to the young man sitting on the bed, her stepson. "Allow me to share with you the intricacies of anatomy," the actress whispered, her voice smooth and enticing. Lena's breath caught in her throat, her fingers clenching the sheets with intensity as the scene played out before her. The tension between her and Jared crackled in the air, a palpable force that made each breath feel heavy and charged with unspoken words. She sensed his gaze upon her, intense and unwavering, yet she remained fixated on the screen before her. The actress sighed gently, her voice laced with breathy pauses. "In that moment, darling," she whispered, her fingers gliding softly along her form. Next to her, Jared stirred, his breaths coming in fits and starts. Lena cast a fleeting look his way and noticed him awkwardly adjusting the waistband of his boxers. She averted her gaze swiftly, her cheeks aflame, yet the rustle of fabric cascading to the ground sent her heart racing. With a deep breath, she felt the weight of the moment settle in her chest, her fingers quivering as they brushed against the delicate fabric of her nightgown. The fabric caressed her skin as she slid it off, leaving her adorned only in a delicate pair of cotton lingerie. For a fleeting moment, she paused, her heart racing. Before allowing them to tumble to the floor, Jared's groan resonated through the mattress, causing Lena's breath to hitch at the sound. She sensed his eyes upon her, a heat radiating from his gaze. Yet she chose not to meet his stare. Instead, she turned her attention to the TV, her hand gliding slowly, hesitantly, as she endeavored to replicate the actress's graceful movements. In the stillness of the room, the only sounds that broke the silence were the uneven, ragged breaths of those present and the soft, distant hum of the television. Lena's heart raced in her ears, her body buzzing with a tension she hadn't experienced in years. She sensed Jared beside her, his every movement echoing her own, the warmth emanating from him clouding her thoughts. The actress on the screen emitted a piercing cry, her form bending gracefully as she ascended to the pinnacle of her performance. Lena's breath caught in her throat, her body quivering as she mirrored the moment. Beside her, Jared emitted a soft sound, and Lena's gaze darted toward him without her even thinking. His eyes were tightly shut, his jaw set firm, his body cord with tension. The silence that enveloped them was palpable, a weighty presence that hung in the air, thick with an unspoken tension that constricted the breath. Lena's body quivered, a delicate dance of nerves as she fought to find her rhythm once more. "It's time to rest," she urged, her voice trembling yet resolute. Jared paused, his eyes darting to her hand. He averted his gaze swiftly, a rush of color blooming on his cheeks as he rose and fumbled for his boxers, slipping them on with trembling hands. Without a word, he departed, gently shutting the door as he went. Lena sat motionless on the bed, her thoughts swirling like a tempest, her body still vibrating with the echoes of recent events. She cast a fleeting look at her fingers, a warm tide of color washing over her cheeks, the notion of Jared's gaze resting upon them. If only for a fleeting moment, the screen danced with light, the credits weaving their tale. Yet, Lena remained still. She lingered before the screen, her thoughts swirling like a tempest, each one a thread in a tapestry she couldn't quite weave together. The golden rays poured in through the expansive windows, illuminating the space with a warm glow. A penthouse, casting a warm golden glow over the sleek modern kitchen. Lena sat at the marble island, her coffee cup cradled between her hands, the steam curling lazily into the air, painting a picture of tranquility in the morning light. The warm, inviting fragrance of freshly brewed coffee danced through the air, intertwining with the rich, buttery scent of toast. Yet, her breakfast lay abandoned, her thoughts still swirling from the events of the night before. Jared stood across from her, his back turned as he meticulously spread butter on a slice of toast, each movement measured and intentional. The stillness enveloped them, thick with an unspoken energy that rendered the atmosphere almost suffocating. Lena's gaze danced toward him, eyes following the contours of his strong shoulders, the way his muscles rippled beneath his t-shirt as he shifted. She willed herself to turn her gaze, concentrating on her coffee instead. Last night's events replayed endlessly in her mind, like a faded film, the echoes of his voice lingering in the air. Inhaling deeply, feeling the warmth of his stare, her cheeks flushed at the recollection, and she savored a deliberate sip of her coffee, seeking solace in its sharp bitterness. "I wish to witness your completion this evening, Jared," he declared, his voice a quiet yet resolute whisper. Lena's coffee cup danced upon the marble counter, sending a few precious drops of the dark elixir cascading onto the immaculate surface. Her heart raced, and her breath hitched in her throat as she gazed intently at him. "That wasn't the agreement," she insisted, her voice trembling. Jared pivoted to meet her, his eyes capturing hers in an unbreakable connection. He savored the rich flavor, licking the butter from his thumb, a simple yet telling gesture. With a measured pace, Lena's stomach churned at the sight before her. "Agreements chafed," he declared, his tone steady yet resolute. The air between them buzzed with an electric tension, his words lingering like a heavy fog in the atmosphere. In the stillness, a profound quiet envelops the world. Lena's thoughts swirled, her heart thundering in her chest as she sought the perfect reply. She parted her lips to contest, to call to mind the limits they had established. But the words trapped in her throat. Jared's gaze held steady, his dark eyes piercing into hers with a fervor that clouded her thoughts. "Well," he urged, his voice gravelly. Lena paused, her fingers gripping her coffee cup with a sense of uncertainty. The mere idea of him observing her, his gaze following her every motion, sent a delightful shiver racing down her spine. It felt overwhelming, deeply intimate, and fraught with peril, yet she couldn't ignore the warmth that twisted within her belly at the thought. She began, her voice trembling, her eyes wandered, falling to the coffee that had spilled across the counter. "I shall ponder upon it." Jared remained silent, and for a fleeting moment, the stillness hung in the air, thick and unyielding. He nodded, a single, deliberate gesture, before returning his attention to the toaster, reaching for another slice of bread. The atmosphere in the room remained thick with tension. It lingered in the atmosphere, tense and charged, as Lena remained motionless at the counter, her coffee turning cold in her grasp. The remainder of the morning unfolded in a haze of uncomfortable pauses and fleeting looks exchanged between them. Lena attempted to immerse herself in her tasks, her laptop aglow before her. Yet her mind wandered repeatedly to Jared, to the way he had gazed at her during breakfast, the warmth in his eyes, the way his voice danced through the air, sending a delightful shiver down her spine. Jared, in his own way, appeared resolute in maintaining an air of normalcy.